Okay, in this video here, we're going to talk about the placement of windows and curtain walls in relation to a wall and in relation to the structure. So to start with, let's just take a look at, okay, what is, when I say punch window, what's a punch window? And when I say curtain wall, what's a curtain wall? So here's an example of a building right here where um, these windows here would be punch windows. Okay, so they are a window sitting in a wall, just like you'd have like in a house, for example. Okay, you'll notice here that now we've got to sit, there'll be a floor structure right here, and you'll see we got a window here that's quite large, and that window is spanning past this floor structure in here. So the frames need to be moved out from the structure. Okay, so in this case, this frame system needs to span past all that floor structure in there. So that's our curtain wall system right there. And you'll notice in this, let me just go to a different picture here. You'll notice here that the, you know, the frames are out much farther than those frames right there of that window. Okay, so here's my curtain wall situation where we're going to push the window out. And generally speaking, this is the punch window situation where it's just a window sitting in a wall. Now, these are the same frame systems. They don't have to be. You know, this could have been a cheaper frame system there, but it's not. It's the same curtain wall frame system as this one, and that's generally how it's done. Because the curtain wall frame systems are actually a pretty high performance system. So when you get out of them, you lose some redundancy and drainage features to it. So curtain wall frames are used even in punch window situations. Okay, so let's start at the bottom here and talk about what we've got going on here. So we have what I've drawn here in plan view is that this is the core right here. That's the core. Well, let's just focus on the bottom, I guess. That's the core superstructure, okay, column right there. Okay, this in here is just a secondary piece of steel that's framing the window opening. So very often you will have some type of steel along the header, sometimes along the bottom of the window, and on the jambs as well, just to frame that window opening. So again, this is the superstructure. This is just a secondary piece of steel framing the opening of the window. Could this be deleted? Yes, absolutely. If the window's quite small, you could just be doing this like with doubled up steel studs or something like that, or even the header above the window could just be like a steel stud lintel type situation. That is just fine. But I'm just going to assume that this is a pretty large window, and what we're dealing with is we're going to need some secondary steel in there to frame this window. So I would just assume you're going to need that secondary steel. When your drawings get to the engineer, they might be like, no, you can just do that out of steel studs. Fine, whatever, deal with it then. But let's assume the worst case scenario right now. Okay, so we have an infill stud here. So meaning the stud wall here is being framed around the steel. So if this wall were to continue, right, the sheathing would be right here, and the gypsum sheathing would be right there, and gypsum board would be right here. The columns, the main superstructure of the building would be in that wall. That is the infill stud wall, okay, just as a recap. And so what I've drawn here with the window system is a window and a wall, so a punch window. So it's just a window sitting in a wall, just like that right there. Okay, that's just a window sitting in a wall. Now, what's not happening here is that this window is not continuous, so they're just small windows. But these windows here, what if this was continuous like this? Okay, so it's a strip window in that case, like a punch window, but it's a strip window because it's continuous, so there wouldn't be any brick there, just be more window. So that situation would be that you would still have a window and a wall. Okay, at least you could do it that way, and that's generally how it would be done. But then whenever there's a column, if there's a column in behind here, you got a bit of a problem. And so just an example of that situation right here. So there's a continuous window and a wall, punch window, and there's obviously a column right there, and a column right there, and a column right there in the building. So the column is interrupting the window. Okay, and so what they've done here is they've actually have two windows here. There's a window right here, and there's a window over here, and they've just put a piece of aluminum in there that looks like it matches the frame closely. Usually I try to match the frame exactly, but a piece of finished aluminum that matches the frame system finish. And so that is what I've drawn right here. So essentially we have one window here and another window over here because it's a window in a wall in an infill stud situation. So the column's in the way. So there's two different windows there, and then what I've done here, I've just added a piece of finished aluminum there that matches the frames and insulated in behind it and so on and so forth. I didn't draw in the air vapor moisture barrier, but it would be there going into the pockets of the windows there and there, and put on that piece of plywood that I've put on the face of the column. Okay, so that's an infill stud situation there on the bottom with a punch window or strip window. Okay, where the superstructure is going to be in the way of the window, so you just do the window around it. Okay. The next thing we're looking at here is a infill stud system again. Okay, so the superstructure of the building. The superstructure of the building is again in line with the wall. So if this was a solid wall right here, the gypsum board would come along right there, and the sheathing would come along right there. You'd be burying the superstructure in the stud wall. So infill stud. Again, this over here is just the secondary steel framing that window system. But what I've drawn here is a situation where we actually want a curtain wall system. So we actually want to span the window frame system past the structure in this case. So in order to do that, we have to push the window out, right? Push the frame system out. So to get it past the column, we got to push it out. So it's been pushed out from the wall like so. And now it can span freely past that column, and you don't have to do this situation down here and break the window system for the column. So it's kind of like what we're seeing in that picture that I showed. And so could we do what if we had a strip window, okay, like this right here, like I showed you. What if we had a strip window right there and we didn't want this to happen? Could we pull this window system out and span it past there so you just have one mullion right there and right there? Absolutely. You could pull a punch window out or strip window out. That's not a curtain wall, but you could pull it out like a curtain wall so that it goes past the column like that. Could be done. Regardless of which approach you take, whether it's this one down here or this one right here, or whether it's a curtain wall, you're just going to want to think about, okay, well, what does that mean for my jamb and my head and my sill situation there? Because now you've pushed this frame system way out from the structure. So the curtain wall gets supported usually by the main superstructure, kind of like that. I mean, there's various ways that the attachment happens with curtain walls. But you still want to frame, even though this curtain wall would be, say, supported by the superstructure, you still want to frame the opening of that window. So what I've drawn here is a piece of plywood, because you always want to nailer. You always line the opening, the rough opening basically, with a piece of plywood. And I put in that secondary steel right there. I obviously don't want it out here because then it's in my insulation. So I put it in the wall, and what I've done here is I've shown a piece of steel plate coming out that's welded to that column right there. That's secondary column that's framing the window, and then the plywood can extend out, and then you got that nice rigid frame for that window right there. Does it have to be that way? No, I mean, you could put a steel angle right here. That could work as well. If the window was small enough, maybe you could delete this piece of steel. Like maybe you don't need an angle, maybe you don't need that piece of steel. You could probably just do 1 or 2 layers of 19 mil plywood and just cantilever it out off, attach it to the column and cantilever it out. Possibly. Residentially, I would certainly be doing that. Commercially, though, I'd be a little bit iffy about that. So that's why I'm going to assume the worst, and I'm going to assume that we're going to put in a steel rigid frame around this window system. But if it was a very small window, then yeah, I would just extend the plywood out. And then I would talk to my engineer and be like, is that going to be good enough, you think? And have that conversation. So again, infill stud, curtain wall system drawn, but this could be done as a punch window or strip window if needed. Okay, I guess the design on the outside would drive that, whether you're okay with that or you're looking for that. That's what would drive the decision as to what to do. If you're okay with this down here, then that would be the more sensible thing to do, I suppose. Okay, so now the last one we're going to look at here is a bypass stud system. So this is the system where we have now pulled the wall stud out from the main superstructure. Okay, so the wall is clearly outside the superstructure here. So it could be your bypass system or your semi-bypass stud system. So what that has done is allowed us to, if we're going to put a window on a wall as a punch window or a strip window, we pretty much already are outside the superstructure, so we don't need to do, this detail down at the bottom here. There's no need to do that because even though it's a window in a wall, it's been installed as a window in a wall, it's already outside the structure. So there's no need to do that. You could just do your 1 mullion if that's what your heart desires. As well, if we did want a curtain wall system, okay, so let's just say it wasn't a punch window or a strip window and this frame is going to extend past the structure on the second floor or whatever, well, it's already outside the structure. So it's fine. So really, what I'm showing here is if you do a bypass stud system, whether it's a punch window or a strip window or a curtain wall, it doesn't matter. The window positioning can be the same as shown here. Now, if you did a semi-bypass system where, let's just say, the metal decking, so what would happen here is the metal decking would extend out to pick up that wall if you did a semi-bypass system. So that would mean you just have to cut that decking back right there like that, wherever this curtain wall system is going to be. If it's a punch window, it doesn't matter because the punch window wouldn't probably go up to the height of the metal deck being extended out. Maybe just to better explain that in section view. So here's a semi-bypass system. So here's the stud system right there. If this happened to be let's just say this happens to be a window right here, and here's the frame for that window right there, and the glass goes down. It doesn't matter that this floor extends out, right? And then maybe you have a window on the next level up here, and the sill is sitting right there. Doesn't matter. Window can be in the wall. If you wanted a curtain wall system right here in a bypass system, so let's just say we had a mullion right here where ceiling is, that would make sense, somewhere around there. And you wanted the vertical mullions to extend all the way up. Okay, so you're going to do a spandrel panel in here. Then that just means you have to cut back that structure. So where that would occur, wherever the curtain wall is occurring, you just wouldn't extend the floor structure out. You just stop it right there, like you normally would in say an infill system or something like that. That's all. You just wouldn't extend that floor structure out, and then that frame system can get through past that structure. And so this video is just about positioning things in walls, depending whether you have a bypass or semi-bypass stud. Where do you position your windows and where do you position your curtain walls? Well, there it is right there. They're kind of in the same spot. And then, of course, if you have the infill stud situation, then the normal for a punch window would be this one down here. That'd be the normal situation, and then you just deal with that in the design. But certainly, you could do a punch window like this in an infill stud wall. But for the purposes of what I'm doing here is, okay, this is our bypass system. Curtain wall and punch window go in like that. This is our infill system. That's what our punch window would look like. And this is our infill stud system with a curtain wall. And that's kind of what it would look like. And then obviously what I haven't shown here is, the cladding on here and how it's tying back into the frame and so on and so forth. That would have to be figured out yet. But that's kind of the nuts and bolts of where you would position these window frame systems.